economy crumbling for years, to put it in the most simplest terms. We're going to get much deeper into this subject as the video goes on, because we have seen all of the indicators of not just a recession, but a complete collapse of the global economy for quite some time. It's been propped up, pushed off, and led along quite a lot, significant amount of centralization over the years. But we see the warning signs all piling up sky high now more than ever. Interest rates looking at going into negative. It's gotten to the point where it's just beyond crazy. And I wanted to go into this article from CNBC, which says a growing club of very powerful countries is steering away from using the dollar. And of course, this is an interesting subject, because it's something that we've been warning about as well for a very long time. There's so much swapping happening, and you know what holds the US dollar up? It's faith. Blind faith, but it's faith, guys. So when we see countries swapping out of the US dollar, we've seen what's happened to a few countries that have attempted that before. Iraq, Libya. But anyway, let's get into this article here, and then we'll go from there. As the article says, the US dollar has been the world's major reserve currency for decades, but that status could come under threat as very powerful countries seek to undermine its importance, warned Anne Corinne from the Institute for the Analysis of Global Security. Major movers such as China, Russia, and the European Union have a strong motivation to de-dollarize, said Corinne, co-director at the Energy and Security think tank, on Wednesday, and I quote, "We don't know what's going to come next, but what we do know is that the current situation is unsustainable," Corinne said. "You have a growing club of countries, very powerful countries. To be sure, the dollar is seen as one of the safest investments in the world, and it rises during times of economic or political tumult. But one factor curbing countries' enthusiasm for the greenback is a prospect of being subject to U.S. jurisdiction when they transact in dollars. When the U.S. dollar is used or transactions are cleared through an American bank, entities are subject to U.S. jurisdiction even if they have nothing to do with the U.S., Corinne told CNBC's Squawk Box. Corinne cited Washington's unilateral withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018, which was followed by the restoration of sanctions on Tehran. That situation left European multinational companies vulnerable to punishment from Washington if they continued to do business with Iran. And I quote, "Europe wants to do business with Iran. It doesn't want to be subject to U.S. law for doing business with Iran, right?" She said. "Nobody wants to be picked up at an airport for doing business with countries that the U.S. isn't happy that they're doing business with." As a result, countries have a very, very strong motivation to shift away from using the greenback, she said. But if the dollar declines in influence, other currencies could fill the role traditionally played by the greenback, especially China's yuan. In recent years, China has tried to internationalize the use of its currency, the Chinese yuan. Such moves have included the introduction of yuan-denominated crude oil futures and reports that China is preparing to pay for imported crude in its own currency rather than the U.S. dollar. Yuan-denominated oil futures, also referred to as petro-yuan, could serve as an early warning sign for the dollar's waning dominance, Corinne said. And I quote, "I think it's a canary in the coal mine. Look, 90% of oil is traded in dollars," she said. "If you have a sort of beginning to crumble away at the dominance of the dollar over oil trade, that's a nudge in the direction of de-dollarization." However, she added that while the petro-yuan may be a necessary condition for the international abandonment of the dollar, it's not sufficient to make it happen on its own. So I want to go to you, Tim, over this. I find it interesting because, first of all, I would disagree that, the Iran nuclear deal would have everything to do with the fall of the dollar. I think it goes a bit deeper than that. And of course, I think the world would more likely take the U.S.'s side over Iran's side, generally speaking. But this comes down to a much more important economic issue, which is, of course, the vast centralization, the central banking powers, the poverty created from central banks, but also this move to China or even an SDR world currency type system down the line. I mean, what do you think it says, first of all, before we go on into all of that so many countries are kind of starting to move in the direction of swapping out of the U.S. dollar? Even Saudi Arabia has shown intentions to do that. What do you think?
Hey Josh, well, thanks for having me on. And you did hit me with a lot of stuff there that we could talk about. And it's funny because we didn't do any pre-interview. And one of the things I did want to talk about as you were going on there was one of the main central tenets here is centralization versus decentralization. And even though these other countries are trying to get away from the dollar, they're trying to create their own centralized control grid so that way they can have and exert their own influence. And you'll see behind me, I've got a little, I guess, little poster thing that says "King's Ransom," and that's to show that the dollar is the money of the crown. It's not our money. Our money is privately owned by central banks who create it out of thin air, and then through fractional reserve banking get to basically introduce even more fake money into the economy. And so ultimately, we need to take control of our own. And what's good for us as individuals is also good for countries, and not in
Hmm.
every regard, but certainly when it comes to having your own monetary sovereignty. I mean, if you are any other country besides the United States of America, why do you want to be, have your, what in a vice grip by the United States that at any time can basically, swing their power to, cut you off from trade. They can put sanctions on you, starve your people. I mean, basically, it is a weapon that the U.S. has been wielding, and they've been wielding it a lot. And so it's one of those things that you probably shouldn't be, sort of like the opposite, I guess, of what Teddy Roosevelt would say. Speak softly and carry a big stick. Whereas here, the Federal Reserve, with rates almost back down to, closer to zero than they were before, that, we don't really have too many sticks left, but we're walking around, threatening everybody we're going to be the dominant power for another 100 years. And so history would show that, no worldwide reserve currency has ever always been the strongest one, contrary to what Donald Trump would like to have us believe. And I'm going to say something controversial here that, we talk a lot about the collapse and the end game and how everything's going to go down. But I actually think when things do go down, that the dollar will actually get stronger, which is temporarily. I'll want to
Of
have that
course.
clarification in there. And the reason is everyone always does the wrong things at the wrong time all the time. I mean, just imagine if you had inside information in August of 2011 when I forgot which credit rating agency downgraded America's debt. I think it was Moody's. But let's say you had inside information that Moody's was going to downgrade the debt. What you'd think is, okay, well, we're going to, short the bonds because now the interest rates should be going up. And when the rates go, because there's going to be more risk for you to hold on to that bond. But what happened is that the interest rates actually went down, meaning that people actually then clamored for even more safety. And so people will always do the wrong thing at the wrong time. And so it's going to be, depending on how this shakes out. I mean, for a small time period, it could be very good to keep assets into the dollar. But then if you don't have the testicular fortitude to move it into another asset that just lost 80%, to then try to preserve your purchasing power, in the long run, I don't think it's going to end up very well for the dollar.
Did you just say testicular fortitude?
Yeah, if you don't have the balls.
Well, absolutely. Well, so I mean, here's the thing. I want to give the pretense, of course, as I always do, that all fiat currencies eventually revert to zero. They always have. They always will. With that said, I mean, we're seeing a global panic happen. We're seeing, the European Union looking at negative interest rates. Australia is moving towards negative right now, and they're moving real fast in that direction. And we talked previously on previous videos, of course, Tim, about how that will affect an economy that's already completely collapsing. Having negative interest rates on top of all that, you can't lower interest rates. How much manipulation do you really have? It gets crazier from there. But I want to ask, going forward, what do you think happens next? Like, what is going to be the next world reserve currency? Or do you think people will finally learn in the age of information when all of this domino effect really does take place?
I mean, the good news is that we don't need every person in the world to adopt cryptocurrency, or we don't need every person in the world to adopt gold. I mean, we really only need a very, very small percentage. And if we just interact with each other, then it doesn't really matter if the world around us is burning down. So I do want to,
True.
yeah, I do want to, kind of preface that. But unfortunately, I think that people are going to beg for more of the same. That's why you see people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and all these other socialist candidates rising in the polls. But at the same time, then you do have, the other movement on the other side, which, I think has better intentions, but they're still advocating for statism. They're still advocating for much of the same problems that got us here. And so what I think is going to happen is that, eventually there's going to be some sort of war. And this is something I was saying back, actually, and I said this, I first started saying this a week before the first Russian supposed Malaysian airline shoot down that occurred. I think that was in 2013 or 14. But what I thought is that we're going to have some sort of boogeyman, whether it's Russia or whether it's China. So then that way, when the monetary system does collapse, or Iran, Iran's always, they're always trying to get that going. But I guess now that McCain's not alive, that at least one of their staunch allies is gone for bombing Iran. But it's what's going to happen is we're going to blame it on the boogeyman, and then that it's going to be, the reason that the dollar collapsed or this or that happened is because of those damn Russians or those damn Chinese or some other existential threat, or the Easter Bunny caused this to happen. When really it's the fact that the underlying systemic problems is you could take all the rich people's money, take all the 1%'s money, take all their income, and it would run the government for 3 months. And so the base fundamental problem is that the first dollar that was lent into the existence was based off of debt. And since it was based off of debt, what that meant is that you can never get yourself out of debt, because the money is debt. It's a system that can never be stopped and never work your way out of it. And we, in the power structure that the powers that be, did a very good job for over 100 years kind of maintaining this high-tech slavery. But what happened in 2008 is that this whole system was collapsing. They had to do emergency measures, and now we're in supposedly the greatest economy ever, but we're still in emergency measures to get ourselves out of this. Over $100 billion was printed in sometime between September and October, and that still is going on because things aren't going great. And if we couldn't get the balance sheet down back to what it was before, when things are the greatest economy ever, then when do you plan on doing it? You also have, it's also important to note that the stock market just hit an all-time high. I believe that's the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. I think the trifecta all hit all-time highs today. I only looked at it for 2 seconds, but I believe that is the case. And why is everything hitting all-time new highs? If you were going to around this time last year when everything was collapsing and take a look at what's going to happen to companies' earnings per share, a lot of those earnings have been down, but it's because the news has gotten bad that it meant that the Federal Reserve is now going to ease. And so the bad news was the good news, which was a concept that we've been talking about for a long time, even before I've been coming on here. And so it's just eventually bad news will be bad news. And I think, and when it comes to what people will do is I think people are going to beg for, someone to help them out. Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
And I do, when it comes to other countries, I know there is some scuttlebutt now between, if you have, I think I heard Max Kaiser the other day. One of our listeners sent me a clip where it was Max Kaiser on, I forgot it was, like Kitco News or something. And he was talking about how China is going to unveil, maybe they have 20,000 tons of gold and will have basically their own crypto that's backed by real gold. And, whether or not, I can't, lay claim to knowing that that's going to happen or not, and whether or not they would actually admit 20,000 and whether or not that's around the corner. I don't really think so, but I could certainly see China having their own crypto because it gives them everything they need. They can then take their social credit score, marry it together with their with this crypto, and then that way, if you're dissenting or you're a Muslim or you're any one of these other minorities over there in China, they can then completely cut you off. And I think that's sort of the game plan.
Certainly. And it's worth pointing out, can you imagine if, say, you wanted to build a house, so you just printed a bunch of currency on your printer and then forced your neighbor to pay for it? And that's essentially what we're seeing right now. The problem is that it's changing the purchasing power of the currency, legal tender note, obviously. So it affects everyone, and it's creating vast amounts of poverty. And it's really, I think, the biggest form of terrorism we've paid witness to in history. It's one of the biggest scams ever in history. And think of what it's doing. You have these people coming out, like you mentioned earlier, like the socialists, Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, AOC, and people like that keep saying, oh, well, we'll just give you money, and there's these problems with wages, so we need to raise the wage and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait a second, let's think about that for a second. Why are wages not paying a personal living? People used to make a lot less hourly as far as the number goes, but they were able to support a whole family, just one parent working. But now there's two parents working at like 10 times the actual number of the of what people were working in the 1950s, and they can't support their family. What that says is that the purchasing power is going down while the price of living is going up. It isn't that, you know, the bread costs more, it's that your currency is worth less, and people need to recognize that and stop repeating those same problems over and over and over again. That's a Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat. Anyway, finishing this off, Tim, I want to make it clear, everyone, that of course Tim is a financial planner. So make sure to check the links below to become a client. He is accepting clients. I want to go to you, Tim, about the solutions, because a lot of people are concerned. Obviously, we talked about, you know, if we're okay as individuals, the whole, you know, system can collapse around us. Those banks can be bankrupt, everything can crumble, and we can still be okay, almost like nothing really truly happened to us. In fact, it might even bring opportunity, as sad as that is. Can you go into the solutions to these crazy problems plaguing basically all of the planet from the financial standpoint as of now?
Yeah, so the solutions are going to be different for, you know, everyone. I mean, probably the most pressing people right now are the people who are close to retirement, or maybe they just retired, because, you know, you're the group of people who've actually worked for a lot of assets. Where if you're, you know, a millennial like myself or Josh, which I guess we're not really representative of the average millennial that's out there. So
certainly not.
You guys would thank us for, you know, providing the other having to, you know, basically the outcast of our generation. But you know, part of the solutions are, if you're close to retirement, and Josh was touching on this, is how to preserve your purchasing power. It's not all about, you know, putting everything into gold or putting everything into silver or putting everything into crypto. And another big thing is, you know, what I like to do is take a look at my clients and say, okay, let's say you need $80,000 a year to live off of, and you get, you know, 30,000 from this pension, and you get 30,000 from, you know, Social Security between you and your wife, and now you need another 20,000 to live. You know, how do we get that as basically, you know, quote unquote, safely as possible? And then how do we take your other assets and use that to then protect against inflation that we see coming down the road? And there's plenty of ways to do that. A lot of times I'm able to actually introduce less risk into their portfolio, and while getting them a greater return, which is, you know, kind of the holy grail of everything. And we also have definitive amounts that they could possibly use using different strategies. It's a lot of people think we're using stop losses and that. And actually, I'm not really a big fan of stop losses, because what happens in a stop loss is that if everyone wants to sell at once, there was like an instance, I think, not like during the flash crash, where people were selling, you know, stocks for pennies, or even in the crypto side, you know, I think at one point Ethereum traded for like a penny when it was really worth, you know, several $100s. So that's one of the problems in a stop loss. So that's not the way that we work with that either. But, you know, we give custom planning advice to people to help them basically make sure that they don't run out of money in retirement, because it is the number one thing that you've worked for your entire life. And unfortunately, for 99% of the advisors out there, you're going to get cookie cutter advice. You're going to get someone that doesn't understand Austrian economics, someone that doesn't understand, you know, something like the creature from Jekyll Island, that doesn't understand crypto. And so right now you're looking at a guy who does understand all those things. And so we'll actually put a link below where you can schedule directly with me. This is, not going to be, you know, an offer that's going to be going on forever. So if you see this video, you know, a year or two in the future, you know, that will probably not be the case, but it's going to be a bit.ly link. So it's a bit.ly/book Tim P, and then that will go directly to me. But anyways, no, Josh, I appreciate the opportunity coming on. I mean, the best time to save yourself is before something happens. And even though we are hitting stock market all-time high today, I'd like to point out that if you go back to January, 2 years in January, I believe it was 2017, the market was not, 2018, the market was not a whole heck of a lot different from where it is right now. I mean, basically, you know, if you take a look at the last 2 years, I mean, the market is only just marginally up. And the reason it's up is because central banks, like the European Central Bank, has had to renege on all the things that they said they were going to do. The Federal Reserve has had to take back everything that they said that they were going to do. And so, you know, the people who've been right in this all along, you know, probably are the ones that are to listen to, you know, going forward, ultimately on what's happening. You know, even though, you know, we kind of paint a kind of doom and gloom picture, you know, our clients still did really well last year, despite everything. When everything tanked around this time last year, going in through December, we saw our clients were only down just a few small percentages, and they were fully invested into the market based on our strategies. So no one was calling me freaking out. And that's just a great feeling to have, knowing that I can go to sleep, knowing that, you know, I can manage money for my, you know, grandparents, not to worry about them, you know, losing everything, because, you know, we've already thought this out well in advance. And it is a crazy world out there. And yeah, and so it looks like the dollar right now is on a suicide mission, unlike Epstein. So
yeah, Epstein didn't kill himself anyway. So I think it's really important that people know it's better to be over prepared than under prepared. I think that's, I mean, there's more solutions than there are problems, and at the end of the day, you know, we've been trying to deliver a lot of those to people for a long time. And I mean, yeah, the stock market has looked good on the surface, but that's even worse for it, I think, down the line. I mean, when you have the ability, you have the plunge protection team stopping the stock market from crashing by just printing vast amounts of currency, the $0 trading desk on Wall Street by the Fed just pumping fake currency into the markets, then yeah, it's going to look good, but is it good? That's a whole other situation entirely.
There's three things the Fed can try to save right now, and this is a point I've been making a lot, is they can either try to saving the stock market, the bond market, or the dollar. It's clear with stock market at all-time highs, they're trying to save the stock market. They're trying to save the bond market from the for the actual borrowers right now, the big corporations in the countries, which means it's not saving it for the savers. So, you know, they can really only save, in my estimation, 2 out of the 3 of those things. I just named the 2 that they, you know, are on record trying to save, and the third one being the dollar. So in the long run, you know, I think the dollar is toast. You take a look at something like Germany in the early 1900s. Their stock market went from around 100 over to over 27 million from 2000, not 2000, from 1911 to 1923. And it wasn't because the average German was sitting there pretty, you know, everything was going great. It's because the value of their goods are being hyperinflated away. And in that type of scenario, you could see Bitcoin go to infinity, because it's a slippery slope where all of a sudden, you know, one day other countries stop using the dollar, and it happens very quickly. And I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but we've got ways to hedge yourself. And so, you know, do it now. Don't do it. Don't do it after everything collapses. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to be in a situation where you have all this fiat currency under your mattress and then you end up having to use it as wallpaper, because that's all it's good for. I want to finish it off with that, but of course it comes down to individual responsibility. I mean, they're going to keep pushing it off as much as they can until it inevitably has to collapse anyway. But I mean, the more they push it off, I mean, the 2008 recession never ended. It was just papered over. So you keep pushing it up, propping it up, you make it a bigger beast when it comes and collapses on you know, on our heads, because basically right now they're just expecting people blindly to prop up this massive system. We're at the bottom of the pyramid, folks. So it doesn't have to be that way. And there, like I said, there's more solutions than there are problems, and it comes down to individual responsibility first and foremost. And you know, in my opinion, gold, silver, cryptocurrencies are probably decentralized, fundamentally useful, blockchain infrastructure technology. You've heard it here before, folks. And I will continue to post these videos for you guys to see. Make sure to press like below. Make sure to check out the links below. Check out Tim's links and see how you can help as well in the comments and the description. There is a lot more coming your way. These are crazy times, folks, but it doesn't mean that it has to be, all the stress has to be put on your shoulders. There's a lot of things you can do about it, and it's time that we, you know, tell people the problems, and then individuals can get down to the solutions rather than living in fear and hoping that someone's going to save them from the problem they created in the first place.
Because ultimately, if you want to stop what's going on, other people need to know what's going on. So share with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Let them know about the Federal Reserve. You know, tell them about Creature from Jekyll Island, Freedom to Fascism, people like James Corbett with Century of Enslavement. People have to know, because your average person out there is going to beg for more of the same. And so the only way to really ultimately stop this and for humanity is to educate people. And that's what Josh is doing. That's what John's doing. That's what myself's doing. That's our motivation. That's our why. And so I just want to be able to help other people know what's going on, so that way they don't get tricked by the same stuff that's been tricking us. I mean, I wish this was already fixed before I was even born, so I didn't have to deal with this. But unfortunately, you know, my parents and grandparents, great-grandparents didn't. So that's why Josh and I are here today, to try to do something about it.
And we're not going to give up anytime soon. As always, guys, I have been doing a little bit of a survey at the end of these videos. It helps with our algorithm, and it helps me know that you guys are actually watching these videos to the end, because a lot of people comment about 10 seconds after I post with negative comments. And you know what? I think it's about time that we do this survey. It's good for 2 reasons, I think. So I'm going to get all of you guys to comment below if you can. If you're watching the video this far in, what was your grandmother on your mother's side's name? If you don't know, put your grandmother on your father's side. Write it below in the comments. Don't tell people why you're writing those names. Don't let people that haven't watched a video figure it out and go from there. I want to see who's watching up to this point, and if you are watching up to this point, congratulations, folks. You are not a slave. So I appreciate you joining us today, Tim, and we'll be going into this much more down the line. Stay tuned for much more from Wham. Make sure to check back as soon as possible because YouTube probably won't notify you of our most recent videos, and it's more important than ever to save independent media. So until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and Tim Pashot signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at Wham, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we could defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on flote.app. That's flote.app. at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at Wham, W-A-M. Flote.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Flote and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Thank you.